revision question on break-even. Your question. Jasmina wants to calculate the number of domestic customer jobs that she needs to take on to break even. She gives you the following information about these jobs. Cost and revenue information on Jasmina's domestic customers are in this table. On the left hand side you've got number of jobs, and you can see it starts at 0 and then goes up in hundreds from 100, 200 on that row. The next row, average revenue, that starts at 0 and then we've got 3,000, 6,000, goes up in 3,000. The third row of information of fixed costs, it starts at 4,000, 4,000, 4,000, i.e. you get the idea why it's fixed. Total costs. Total costs start at 4,000, be aware of that, and then it goes up 5,000, 6,000, it goes up 1,000. So that's, take note of how the numbers go up because of what you're going to be asked to do. The next bit you've got is using this data above in the table and the following blank chart, which you'll see on the next slide. You should draw and label the fixed cost, total cost and revenue lines, and then identify the break-even point. This chart, this empty chart for break-even, will be provided for you in the exam question, and you are expected to draw the 3 lines to identify break-even point. If you've gone and looked at that and gone break-even, no, the chart paper, no, then seriously, we need to revert to the finance fire ladder of success again. Well, according to the steps, we need to seriously not panic. There's the first one. So step 2, highlight, mark the areas you need to work out. So let's just make sure we know what we're working out. First of all, you're asked to draw and label 3 things. Let's make sure we get the 3 things. First one are fixed costs. Then it's total costs. And the final line is revenue. There's the 3 lines. Second part to the question though is to identify break-even point, and that's not a line, that is a point. So where are you going to get all this information from? Well, naturally it's going to come from the table of cost and revenue on Jasmina's domestic customers. Well, let's make sense of it. Here are the fixed costs, it's all across that horizontal line. Then there's total costs, and if you noticed where it starts, make sure you've got a comparison with fixed costs, and let's make sure we understand how the numbers increase on total costs. And the final one, the number of jobs and average revenue. Now these need to be done together because this is a calculation. Whether you've got average revenue or just revenue, it doesn't matter. You need the number of jobs, the number of sales, and you need the revenue because you've got to calculate those figures in order to draw the line, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Well, how are you going to calculate and work out break-even? There are 2 ways. You can do it by using the formula or by drawing the break-even chart. Now the question asked you to draw and label the fixed cost, total and revenue lines to identify the break-even point. Those 4 things you needed to do, but don't discount using the formula because that can be a way of double checking your answers. Well, let's start on the question then. So the first line that you need to plot, and I always use this one first, are fixed costs. As you can see here, all the horizontal line has been highlighted, and you can see you've got 4,000, you've got 4,000, then you've got 4,000, and you've got 4,000. You get the point. So that would indicate that you have got this kind of line. If you're there going, yeah, that's all logical and that's quite obvious, that's brilliant. I'm really glad that you're doing that. But please don't forget, we are going through the step by step because we need to make sure we're building confidence, particularly when it comes to the next 2 lines. So moving swiftly on, the next line you want are total costs. And by careful observation and obviously doing step 3 on the ladder, you can see that you've got an increment of 1,000 per cell across the horizontal line. So your line is going to look like this. Straightforward, easy, brilliant. Following it logically, amazing. So let's do the next 2 things. Now our next line we've got to draw is total revenue. Now there's 2 sets of data you need to take on board for the revenue line, and you've got the number of jobs going across. You've got 100, 200, let's just deal with 100 for now. There's 100 gardens that Jasmine has gone to do, and then you've got average revenue. Because it's provided you with average revenue, it's therefore telling you how much she has made for those 100 jobs. So you don't need to calculate anything here. So for 100 jobs she's made £3,000, for 200 jobs she's made £6,000, and so on. Well, if you notice how the revenue is going up, that's going to indicate the kind of line that you need, and it's going to indicate the increment, how much the line goes up as well. And don't forget what happens on the number of jobs at 0 and the average revenue compared to the total costs and the fixed costs. That bit's very important because that bit tells you where to start your lines when you're looking up the y-axis, the cost and revenue part of the chart. And sometimes that's quite a regular place where students forget where they need to start the line. So you know you're on the right lines, your break-even chart should start to look like this. This is the sample one from the break-even lessons that we've covered. Be aware though, these aren't your answers. These are making sure that you've got 3 lines that look like this. You should have your fixed cost looking, guess what, horizontally. Then you've got a total cost. Notice where that red total cost line starts on that example. And then you've got the purple revenue line, and notice where that one starts. So that's what yours need to start looking like. Once you've got your 3 lines on there, then we're going to be able to identify break-even point. Yep, you've guessed it, it's the point at which the total costs and the total revenue lines cross. Now it might be in the middle of the chart, it might be all the way over to the right of the chart, because it might take that particular company longer to break even. The point at which it crosses though is the break-even point. And guess what, if you're not sure, then double check your answer that you've drawn by using the formula. That would be a good way to do it, because you get a point for fixed cost line, you get a point for total cost line, you get a point for total revenue line. You get a point, the 4th mark, for break-even point. So make sure you get that right by using the formula as your backup. One last question to consider before we take on putting in your final answer. When you've worked out break-even, when you've looked at the number of customers and the costs, and you've looked at the revenue, and you've compared and you found out how much it's going to take, for how many customers, how many sales, how many jobs it's going to take in order to cover all your costs, is your answer in the number of customers or jobs or money? Which way around is your answer? You've got to be really clear on this, because it's definitely only one of them. So let's go through that logically. You need to find out how many sales, jobs, customers it takes to cover your cost. That will hopefully give you a nudge in the right direction. And finally, here is a clean copy of the question and the chart paper for you to answer and get your response for the 4 marks.